Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Register's Kettle podcast. I'm Register reporter Brandon Villarolo. With me this week are our systems editor Tobias Mann and security editor Jessica Lyons, and we're going to take a slightly different approach this week. Instead of diving into a single topic, we're going to split today's episode into a couple segments, starting with the wrap-up of Google Cloud Next, before moving on to talk about the latest fear-quelling revelations about Anthropic's too dangerous to be released cybersecurity AI Mythos. And yes, there is some relation between these two topics. Specifically the fact that artificial intelligence and agents seem to be an ever-present theme in everything right now. Hey guys, thanks to both of you for joining me.
Good to be here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So let's kick off with a quick review of some of the most pertinent Google Cloud's Next news from the week. Tobias, you covered the event extensively, so what standout items did you see?
Sure. Obviously there was the undertone of AI across everything. I joked at CES, which was supposed to be a consumer electronics show, that, every conference is now an AI conference. And
Right.
Google Cloud Next was an AI conference for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I think you even called it that in your story, right? Like the AI Burning Man or something was what you said in a preview in March.
Right. And so this trend just keeps going, and
Yeah.
if we can strap AI to the branding of anything at this point, these companies are going to do it. So we had the overarching tone, just kind of the same story that we've seen from Microsoft at its big cloud event, where we saw from AWS at reInvent in December.
Mm-hmm.
Google has now had its opportunity to spread the gospel of the artificial agents that will maybe take our jobs, maybe not take our jobs, maybe just make them a little less miserable. Hard to say.
Yeah, jury's still
Um,
out on that one so far, I think.
yeah, but I think one of the most interesting elements of this is Google was one of the first to start building AI hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Back in the mid 20 teens with its tensor processing units, and those have evolved considerably over the last couple of years. Now it's dual tracking because we've reached a point where inference is a big enough market. The act of serving these pre trained models is a big enough market that they actually see value in having dedicated chips just for the serving part and the training part. Google now sees the value in having dedicated hardware both for the model serving as well as the training of the models, two separate tracks. And I think this really underscores this kind of shift in the market and this inflection point where uh, AI is now useful enough in enough things that people are consuming it, actually
Mm-hmm.
using it. But that means that the providers actually have to drive down the cost of doing it. Otherwise, it's going to become a really big problem. And
Right.
so we got
And so that's
two
where the
new
inference
chips.
chip, I assume, comes in, right?
Yeah, and this is where we got two new chips. And it's not the
It's 2
regular.
TPU-8s, right? It's TPU-8
Yes,
T and I think is what they
yes.
were. Yeah.
T for training, I for inference. It's
Mhm.
actually not the worst naming that we've seen from any of these companies.
No, it's pretty straightforward compared to some of the other things they can come up with.
But under the hood, they're a fair bit different than what we've seen from what NVIDIA has done with some of its kind of quote unquote training focused parts versus its inference focused parts. Um, Little background: inference is a very memory bandwidth bound workload, so you need really
Mhm,
fast memory. So historically, what NVIDIA has done is have one chip that has a good amount of memory. It's pretty fast. It's got a ton of compute because that's what training needs. And then for
mhm.
inference, it specializes on the kind of compute inference cares about, usually very low precision. And uh, and having as much memory bandwidth and as much memory as you can fit on it in order to get that workload done. Google took a completely different track. Yes, both of those things are true. It has less compute than the inference chip has less compute and more memory bandwidth than the training version.
Mhm.
But it also introduced a bunch of what are called collective communications accelerators. To unpack that, you have to understand a little bit about how the models are built. And the short of it is today, most frontier models are actually a collection of submodels that are spread
Mhm.
out across multiple accelerators, whether they're GPUs or TPUs. And anytime you interact with one of these models, it's going to hit different submodels for every single token. Every word that's generated is going to hit a different set of those.
Hmm.
And that means there's a ton of communication has to go on between the chips. And it's this that has become the bottleneck in terms of inference cost. The communications are overwhelming the systems. And so Google has implemented new accelerators in these inference chips to basically keep that from happening and drive down the cost of actually serving these models.
So, did you see a lot of evidence this week that it's going to be effective? I mean, is it going to drive down inference costs? They have any data to support the claims yet, or?
I think the overall I don't think I've seen any data to suggest that yes or no that this is going to be the thing that is going
Hmm.
to do that. Um, there's only so much you can do on the hardware side. Just this morning, DeepSeek V4 was released, and
Right.
they talked about a bunch of architectural stuff that they're doing for that same reason. And I think the better evidence for any of this is actually that Google is not the first to do this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, NVIDIA was one of the first to do the kind of collective communication acceleration. Theirs is built into the NVLink switches in the rack that stitches the 72 GPUs together.
Hmm.
But it's a very similar idea. Um, AWS has now moved to a architecture that's almost identical to what NVIDIA built. Uh, and their engineers cited that same communications overhead as the reason for moving away from these giant meshes to much smaller fabrics. And
Hmm.
so there's just it's been a continuing trend of all of these infrastructure vendors or developers moving in this direction.
So this is just kind of just Google playing catch up with inference cluster changes that other people have already, or inference cluster architecture changes that people have already made.
Ooh, this is where we can get in a little bit of trouble with Google. They might come after us for that. So the thing about Google's TPUs is that
Apologies to the Google legal team.
um, the thing about TPUs is that usually they've been deployed before we ever hear about them.
Gotcha.
This is not universally true of AI accelerators, but
Hmm.
usually when you look at the speeds and feeds for these chips, you start drawing like direct comparisons to like how much memory does this chip have? How much memory does NVIDIA's chip have? How much compute? All back and forth, and you go, "What? Well, this thing isn't all that impressive." And some of that is you oftentimes end up comparing a chip that's already in Google's data centers to a chip that's going to be in data centers end of the year,
Right.
middle of next year. But also, the other element of that is that Google supports massive clusters compared to
Right.
anybody else. Like systems with well over 9,000 of these accelerators all stitched together, and then they'll use that as a template and just add more of those pods if they need more. And
Okay.
that's predominantly for training, but even the inference clusters are just enormous, like
Okay.
a
So this
thousand.
isn't necessarily Google playing catch up. It's simply them saying, "Hey, this is the architecture that we're we're already using, and now we're telling you about it," sort of
Yeah,
thing.
there are some, the model architectures have changed, and as they change, there are some obvious things that people can do to
Right.
make it more efficient. And I think that's just the trend is Google's event is a little after all of the other cloud providers. It might just have been that they're just now getting around to talking about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, we won't ding Google for that, given that they can't control the calendar, I suppose. And so, moving on to the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. You didn't cover that, but Orion did. Can you tell me a bit about that? The Jeep, the GEAP, uh, what you've learned about it this week?
Yeah, this is everybody is trying to find ways to bring agents into the enterprise. It is a messy prospect because none of this is particularly easy. And so we are getting various degrees of hand holding and blueprints that put almost all of it together and then just kind of gives you, it kind of helps you get to the finish line. This is really a lot of what we've been seeing over the last couple of months from AWS, IBM, um, Microsoft. Everybody is trying to figure out what is it going to take to kind of clear those roadblocks. Is it, helping enterprises kind of massage the data sets that they already have? Is it
Hmm.
helping them build translation layers so that they can get data into the system and kind of get around some of those API headaches where the agents don't know how to talk to the system where their data is.
Right.
It's a lot of the same of what we've seen previously.
Okay,
Another
gotcha. Yeah.
piece
So,
another
oh,
piece
go
of
ahead.
that, it was the security part with the Gemini Enterprise Agent platform, that is a mouthful, is
Yeah, it is.
is how it allows organizations or aims to allow organizations to better secure and manage those and assign all of these AI agents with their own unique identities,
Yeah.
which should help with the issue that a lot of organizations have of not knowing what's in their environment, what it's accessing. Now the agents have their own identities as well. So,
Right. Now, to be clear, this is just a rebrand of the Vertex AI development platform, right? With some other features added in, right? It's basically like, I think from what the Orion story, the quote that stood out for me was like the build, scale, govern, and optimize is kind of the four things that Google wants to have in this suite. So it really seems like more of it's a new product in quotation marks, right? But it's more of a like lumping all these things together and trying to create a central plane for you to manage a constantly growing number of AI agents. So probably a
Right.
necessary thing.
I think so there's two elements here that keep coming up across all of these kind of enterprise focused products. The first is this idea of ACLs where you kind of define who gets to touch what. This is
Mhm.
not new. There's a lot of this kind of resurfacing of things that we built for people to control access patterns around it. The challenge is, and at least as I see it, is that the way that agents interact with this data isn't through the conventional interfaces that you or I would be. These agents, for the most part, aren't doing computer control in order to access the information. They're talking to APIs, MCP servers, other bridge servers, and that introduces different challenges because the way a lot of ACLs have been built haven't necessarily been designed for that kind of API environment.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, well, okay, so we got the enterprise platform, which I'm not gonna repeat the whole name of again because 'cause I'll bungle it, and then we had some new AI security agents that Google released this week too, right, Jess? There was, I
right,
think, 3
right.
of them that they came out with?
Yes, there were. And so to Tobias's point, when he started the conversation about how every conference is now an AI conference, every security company is also now an AI security company, and every company's security strategy seems to be that you need to use AI to fight AI, and the way that they are primarily proposing we do that is through agents. So we had seen Google release security agents at its event last year, and then its newly acquired Wiz also had its own that came out at RSAC about a month ago. And then at this Google Cloud Next, Google introduced 3 new agents, like you said. They're pretty self-explanatory, which is nice. The names tell you what the agent does. The first one is Google's threat hunting agent, which, as the name implies, it looks for these attack patterns and behaviors that might be able to get past traditional security tooling.
Mhm.
Its second one is called the detection engineering agent. And this one kind of helps organizations look for gaps in their environments and then create new detections and rules based on what it finds to eliminate these. And then there's a third one, it hasn't quite been released yet, and it's called the third party context agent. And again, it uses third party data, and
Mhm.
it looks at existing security workflows and then it enriches them with better context. So,
Okay, so it's pulling the context in to inform those workflows a little better from third
yes,
parties, basically. Okay,
yes.
cool. Yeah, that detection engineering agent to me seems like I don't know, personally, having worked in IT, right, that seems like a
Mhm.
huge deal to me, right? Like, because there are so many security coverage gaps in an IT
Right.
environment, anything, right? I mean, and I haven't really been an active IT employee in more than 10 years, so God, it was probably even worse back then. But, it's just it seems like this could be a really great thing for IT teams. It
Right.
sounds like. Um,
Definitely.
but it seems like this entire story just kinda gets to the thrust of, like, I know you mentioned in your story about this that AI versus AI, AI
Uh-huh.
attacker versus AI defender is kind of still a new novel field that hasn't really been tested well, but I feel like this, plus all the other agentic AI solve your security problems news, seems to point to the fact that, like, defenders are really kind of being left with little choice, at least from the narrative view of these companies, right? It's like, well, the attackers are using this, so if you don't use AI to defend your stuff, you're going to be left out. You're left behind. You're going to get hacked, etc. I feel like do defenders have a choice to adopt this stuff at this point, or is this like something they should probably consider doing?
It's something they should consider doing. It's something that they do need to use because it is true that attackers are using it, and
Hmm.
there are some things that models can do a lot quicker and more efficiently than humans can, but, there's also that aspect of hype in a lot of this, and I think that's
Yeah.
something that right now, I feel like a lot of companies are still hyping up everything it can do, and it's going to be launching autonomous attacks in no time. Even the way that Google described its model, its security model for the future, is an agentic fleet that does a lot of the routine cybersecurity work and is overseen by humans. So, still, I
Hmm.
think there's this question of where in the loop is the human in all of this. And what we've seen from some other stories this week is that we still need a human. There is still a lot of hype around AI agents and what they can do both for defenders and offensive security. And humans are going to continue to play a role in security as we move forward.
Yeah, and thank you for that excellent segue because that moves us right into our next topic, right? Which is speaking of hype, it's Mythos, right? So it looks like in the past week the lid has kind of been blown off of the Mythos AI. It's to a degree. I don't think anyone's shared any of the model's code or anything, but some people broke in, got access to it that weren't part of this project, or this program that Anthropic was running. And it seems like a lot of people are starting to also who've used it are now saying, this thing's not really as amazing as Anthropic was making it out to be. So, Jess, kind of walk us through what happened this week with that.
Right. So there were both of those things happen, like you said, on earlier this week. Anthropic did confirm that some non-Glasswing partners have accessed the model, and they did that through one of its third-party vendor environments. So Glasswing is the preview program that Anthropic developed where it has given I believe we're over 50 at this point, organizations and major tech companies access to Glasswing or sorry, to Mythos to test it
Hmm.
out in their environment, hopefully find and fix all of the bugs it says that Mythos can before the attackers are able to access this and use it for evil purposes. So
Hmm.
this group and Bloomberg originally reported this, a group of people, they gained access to Mythos. By all accounts, it doesn't sound like they were doing anything bad with it. It sounds like they just wanted to test it out. This is what they like to do is test these unreleased models and see what they can do. So they gained access through this third-party vendor. We don't know who that is.
Right. It
It
was a training partner or
it
inference
was
partner, I think they
it
said.
was a training partner.
Right.
Um, there's also some indication that some of the details of the access could have been revealed in a recent Mercor data breach. This is a AI training company, and it works with Google among other of the frontier labs. And so they accessed it, and this it kind of shows that it's really difficult to keep source code under code in general under wraps. We saw this with the earlier Cloud Code source leak. And when you have so many people who are trialing it, and then you have the partners who are involved with developing it, Amazon's making it available to some Bedrock customers as well. So the pool just keeps growing. I think at this point it's probably safe to say that cat's out of the bag. I
Yeah.
think we're going to hear more about these types of instances moving forward.
I mean, that was one of the things we talked about in our episode a couple weeks ago about the Mythos, announcement, was like, how long is it going to take for someone to
Yep.
bust into one of these instances and grab a copy of this, right? And obviously,
Right.
apparently, it took us about 2 weeks. And I just find it amazing that they basically guessed the location of the model online based
Right.
on the information that was spilled in that Mercor breach. It's just, yeah, it's pretty amazing to me that, again, right, like supply chain attacks are where it's at nowadays,
Right.
not a direct hack. And so it seems like not only that breach happened, but there are also some security researchers and companies that have been testing it who have been saying, well, it's cool, but it's not that big of a deal. And that was, I think you spoke to someone at Mozilla who specifically commented on that point, I
This
think. Is
this
that
was
correct?
actually Simon. So he
Oh,
did,
I'm
but
sorry. That was Simon's story. Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, what they found is that they tested they're one of the Glasswing partners, so they had authorized access to Mythos,
Uh-huh.
and using it, they found 271 Firefox flaws. But at the same time, they said these weren't anything that a security researcher, a human security researcher, couldn't have found. So their CTO said this is great. It's going to help a lot with the fuzzing tools that we usually use to find bugs. Um, and we still need humans here. He said, I haven't seen any bugs that couldn't have been found by an elite human researcher. So
Right.
it seems the general consensus is yes, Mythos is good. It's like a good security analyst when you're looking for bugs. And plus it doesn't need to take lunch breaks or sleep or do anything like that. It can run continually. And there's still this advantage of having humans when you're looking for these more complicated exploits.
Yeah. But basically, also, I think another story of Simon's too was that open models like Opus
Right.
and others are actually pretty much just as good at finding these vulnerabilities as Mythos might be. Is that seem to be what Simon discovered in that other piece that he wrote? I think.
It does. So we saw Simon talked about that. It was a Black Hat Asia talk, and
Right.
then we also saw this ISLE study earlier this week. They did a replication study, and they tested Mythos, the vulnerabilities that Anthropic put out in its original blog and said, "Here's what Mythos found." So they tested this on smaller, cheaper open weight models, and they found essentially that it produced a lot of the same analysis. So again, it's hard when you don't release this model to the public, so everybody
Yeah.
can't be out there, and we haven't seen many actual numbers from Glasswing partners yet. Mozilla's was the first that we've seen in terms
Mhm.
of the number of bugs it actually found, but, yeah, we also in Simon's story too, he found that you could, essentially scaffold these open source models together
Uh-huh.
and produce the same results as you
Right.
Yeah.
would in Mythos, and it's a lot cheaper too because Mythos is very expensive, so
Right.
then you don't incur these massive costs as well.
Right. It
Yeah.
does really make me wonder if we're reaching a point where the models can only get so much better, but the frameworks in terms of how they're being used, things like Claude Code is an agent framework. It connects to a model. Doesn't have to connect to Anthropic's models. You can connect it to any model that you want. Uh, how effectively that model can work with that harness it varies wildly from open model to open model. But it does make me wonder whether or not we're starting to see a shift towards the harness being the deciding factor in how effective the models actually are. It's like giving a carpenter a bunch of Walmart special tools versus, Milwaukee or Makita tool. Like giving them a competent, worker better tools usually ends up with better results.
Mhm.
Uh, and I do kind of wonder if we're reaching that point with Mythos and with some of these other models where they keep getting bigger and more expensive to run, but they don't necessarily get all that much better than some of these smaller models.
Well, not to go off on too big of a tangent, but do you think that's a bubble buster? I mean, are we reaching the point where it's like, all right, either something else has to happen to make these models keep getting better, or we're all just going to kind of get sick of same old?
Hey, we're launching the clusters into space, man. I think
Yeah, it's not going anywhere except into
Uh,
orbit, right?
I think the hype train is going to take anything at this point that's going to keep more hot air going into the bubble. Um,
Cough, cough, all birds, right? I own 2 pairs of those shoes, and I was so disappointed to hear that they sold the brand and pivoted to AI. I was like, "Well, I guess that's it for me buying their footwear." Supposedly sustainable and environmentally conscious, and now all of a sudden it's an AI company. All right,
Right.
cool, guys.
Everyone's an AI company now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, McDonald's probably is too in a lot of ways. Everybody. Um, so, anyways, kind of summing up, right? These are 2 different news items, but I feel like they're very closely related. What do you guys? I mean, what kind of takeaways or lessons do you think we can learn from this sort of joint couple of stories we covered on this episode of the Kettle? To me, I feel like uh, the tech industry is, it's AI agents are coming. They're going to push this
Mhm.
stuff. It's coming out whether we are ready for it or not. So to me, it seems like this and some of the other prior cloud conferences are just kind of this reminder that like, hey, adapt or die is what I kind of feel like this is, right? Tech is changing and we're going to have to change with it or else we're going to just be finding ourselves very confused about the new state of things. So I don't know. What do you guys think about these couple of announcements? Tobias?
Yeah, I think you're spot on about agents are coming. Right
Mhm.
now, it's a matter of convincing enterprises that they're worth investing in and kind of removing the barriers to adoption that have made it so difficult for enterprises to kind of move into that field with confidence. But it does shift the impetus onto the inference providers, whether that's the big hyperscalers of the neoclouds or if you're running this locally in an on-prem data center, that different hardware may be required at this point. All of the
Right.
investment up in AI infrastructure up to about last year was largely focused on training. And it does really seem like 2026 is kind of the first year we're really starting to see widespread deployment of infrastructure aimed at inference.
Yeah.
Um, Agents really take off, and but they need so many tokens that it's not cost effective. It's very problematic for everybody involved because it doesn't you can if you chew through so many more tokens a month, then you might suddenly realize it's actually cheaper to go hire an intern who's almost as good.
Right. A competent security intern to replace your Mythos instance. Jess, what do you think were the takeaway from these stories?
I think that it illustrates we can't forget security. I think people are really excited to use AI for all of the things in security. It's the new shiny toy right now. And we still need to get a handle on the basics. Identity is a major problem. Access
Hmm.
management with humans, what humans can access. This is even a bigger problem when it comes to agents. So we can't just be letting this train keep running as fast as it can without also putting some guardrails in terms of knowing what are the agents, being able to identify them, what they have access to, what they don't have access to, and keeping a hold on that. I think also just it illustrates things that insider threat remains an issue. With the Mythos, the access, I had one of the execs I talked to, he said it didn't require a sophisticated hack to access this
Hmm.
top secret model. It required a contractor, a URL pattern, and a guess. So again, insider risk is still an issue. You need to know supply chain is an issue, not just for security and your AI models themselves, but also who's accessing all of these things. In this case,
Yeah.
it's hard to keep it managed when it's just this ever-growing list of dependencies. And I
Right.
think both of those are going to only get bigger as we continue to use more agents and incorporate those into the workflows.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those, the more things change, the more they stay the same in the
Mhm,
security world, I feel like, to a degree.
mhm.
Yeah, we're gonna have to save it for the next episode of The
Yep.
Kettle, when I'm sure we'll be talking about something just as interesting as this, and probably AI related too, let's be real. Thanks for joining us this week, guys, and we will see you soon on the next episode.
See you later.